My name is Rory, and I work at a junkyard. Not the kind with forklifts and uniforms and clipboards. This is the kind where you have to check for raccoons before you open the fridge. And by fridge, I mean the half-buried '89 whirlpool near the tire fire pit. I've been here about 8 months, long enough to know where the soft spots in the mud are, long enough to stop caring what's dripping from the top of the washing machine pile. Before this place, I didn't last anywhere for more than a few weeks. Diner jobs, warehouse gigs, stocking shelves at a place that sold fireworks and taxidermy under one roof. All of them had clocks, and I hate clocks. But this? Hauling scrap? Sorting brass from copper and trying to guess if a thing's valuable or just old and weird. That I can do. No dress code, no real hours, and nobody bothers you out here. Except Baker. Baker owns the place, or his family does. He says it's been in their name since before the road got paved, which is not impressive. But he's alright. Big guy, loud shirts, always smells faintly like kerosene and old pennies. Spends most of his time poking around the far corners of the yard, looking for something he calls a score. Every time he finds something with a bit of rust and a story, he yells out, "Another man's trash." Then he waits for me to say the second part. "Is still trash," I reply. He laughs every time like it's new. And I think that's his way of trying to make this place feel like, a kingdom instead of a pile. He's got a whole trailer full of stuff he's curating. Looks like a flea market threw up in there. Clocks that don't tick, fans with no blades, porcelain baby dolls with glassy little eyes. The junkyard's out past the town limits, where the woods start closing in, and nobody locks their doors because nobody really comes this way. The ground's uneven, and sometimes things go missing in the piles, or show up where they weren't before. Baker says it's raccoons. I say it's raccoons with a crowbar. Every second Sunday, this priest drives out here in a rickety old sedan, comes with holy water and a bucket, blesses the grounds, mutters a few words in Latin. Then he sits with Baker on the porch of the trailer, slipping something that's not communion wine. I asked once why he comes. Baker said, "Well, some places are magnets for the stuff folks don't want to carry anymore." Got my own cot in the back of the parts shed, little burner to make beans and coffee, and a radio that only plays local stations when the wind's just right. It's not much, but it's the longest I've ever stayed anywhere. So far, I've learned a lot about Baker and what he does with my time here. Baker's been running the place since his dad passed, but the junkyard's been in the family for a long time. He told me once it started as a dump site after the war. Folks didn't know what to do with old metal or broken machines, so they just dragged it out of here and left it. Eventually, people started dropping off everything else too. Cars, beds, TVs, even things like bathtubs and statues. Now it's a maze of piles, all stacked up with things people didn't want anymore. Some of it's worthless, but Baker swears there's good stuff if you know where to look. He thinks of himself like a prospector, always digging through rust to find something valuable underneath. He says you can tell a lot about a person by what they throw away. I don't know about that. I mostly just move stuff. My job is more basic. I haul things from one place to another, sort metal into the right bins, cut parts off broken cars, stack tires, clean up anything that might catch fire, and load or unload the truck when people drop things off. It's heavy work, but keeps my hands busy. Some days are slower than others, especially if it rains or the ground gets too soft. On those days, we fix up tools or rearrange the piles to make more room. People still come by sometimes, though not a lot. Mostly older guys looking for parts, or scrappers trying to make a few bucks. Sometimes weird people show up, folks with long coats or weird accents, asking for something unusual. Baker deals with them. I try not to look too close at the stuff they bring in or take out. There's a rule we don't touch the northwest corner of the yard. Baker just calls it the back lot. It's fenced off and overgrown with weeds. Every time I've asked him about it, he just says, "Family history." That's all. One time, I saw him go back there alone with a shovel, but he didn't say anything, and I didn't follow. Our setup's simple. Baker lives in the trailer at the center of the yard. It's got a porch, a radio, a couple of lawn chairs, and one of those tiki torches he thinks keeps bugs away. I sleep out back in the shed where we keep the parts. There's a cot, a shelf, single bulb, and a curtain for a door. He pays me in cash at the end of every week and lets me keep whatever change I find in the junk. Once, I found a gold ring wedged inside an old couch. He let me keep it. I traded it for boots. Baker's alright. He talks a lot, especially when he's excited about something he found. He's always in a good mood, even when nothing goes right. Sometimes he brings me lunch from town. Sometimes we just sit and listen to the radio after work. He tells stories about things he's seen or people who used to live around here. I think most of it's made up, but I let him talk. Makes the place feel less quiet. I've got strange stories about this place. Not the kind Baker tells. His always end with a laugh or some lesson about trusting your gut. Mine are different. You want to hear one? Alright, this one's about my first day, and the plastic monkey that almost bit my hand off. Well, my first day at the junkyard started like you'd expect. Baker handed me a dented metal hook and told me to start digging through the third pile. That's the one behind the old bus near the tire stacks. He said if I found anything that looked like copper, brass, or old toys in good shape, to set them aside. Said he could maybe sell them to some antique lady in town who paid by the box. I didn't know what I was looking for, really. It was just a pile of furniture, busted radios, broken fans, dusty stuffed animals, and kitchen junk. But Baker seemed excited, and I needed the cash, so I went to work. About 20 minutes in, I spotted something strange poking out from under a ripped lawn chair and a pink toilet lid. It looked like part of a little monkey. I pulled it out and brushed it off. It was one of those wind-up toys, an old monkey in a red vest with little brass cymbals in its hands. Its fur was matted and one eye was cracked, but it still looked intact mostly. I remembered seeing something like it once when I was a kid. I'd caught a bit of Phantom of the Opera on a fuzzy TV at the orphanage, and there was a monkey just like it on stage. It was part of the story somehow, I think. I remember thinking it was kind of cool. Creepy, sure, but cool. So I held it up and called out, "Hey, Baker, this worth anything?" He looked up from the trailer porch, squinted, and said, "Oh, maybe. Bring it over." I didn't even get halfway across the yard. As I was walking, I felt something twitch. At first, I thought I imagined it, like when your grip slips. But then the monkey's arms jerked once. Just a quick little clack of the cymbals. I froze. It hadn't been wound up. Then it did it again. The cymbals clashed once more, louder this time, and its head turned a few inches toward me. I let go, but it didn't drop. It was still hanging from my hand like it latched on somehow. Then I saw its little fingers curl tighter around mine. Baker, this thing's... The monkey's mouth opened with a little click, and its teeth, way too sharp for a toy, snapped down fast right in my hand. I jerked back, but not in time. It caught the side of my index, and I felt a sharp pinch, like it was trying to tear the whole thing off. "Holy hell," I said, shaking my hand like crazy. The thing was hanging on, clacking its cymbals over and over like it was excited. I slammed it against the side of an old freezer, but it didn't let go. Then Baker came running, holding a silver thermos in one hand and a wooden spoon in the other. "Move," he said. I ducked, and Baker popped the lid off the thermos and flung water right onto the monkey. The thing screeched, not like an animal, more like when you pull open a rusty drawer, and dropped off my hand. It flopped onto the gravel and twitched for a second, then went completely still, its arms locked up mid-cymbal. I looked at my hand. There was a small puncture near my knuckle and a thin line of blood. Nothing broken, but it still stung. "What the hell was that?" I said, wiping my hand on my jeans. Baker shook the thermos, then leaned over and poured more water on the toy. "Cymbal monkey. These damn things show up sometimes. Must have slipped through last Sunday. Guess the priest missed that one." "Wait, what was in that?" I asked, pointing to his thermos. "Holy water. You want to keep some nearby, especially when digging through personal items. Dead folks don't always let go of their stuff. Toys are the worst. Dolls, puppets, musical crap. They pick up energy, especially when the person dies angry or alone," he explained. I blinked at him. "You're saying this place has cursed toys?" "Well, some. Not all of them, obviously. Enough that we don't joke around with anything that plays music. If it moves on its own, don't keep it. Don't sell it. Don't put it near your sleeping space," he said. He looked at me for a long second. "You still want the job?" he asked. I glanced at my hand, then at the pile I'd been sorting, then at the monkey, still frozen mid-clang. It hadn't moved again, but I was not about to test it. "Well, it's more exciting than stocking shelves," I said. Baker laughed. "You'll fit right in." And that was my first day. That monkey wasn't the last weird thing I saw. Not even close. After the first day, I started paying more attention. Not just to the stuff people brought in, but to the yard itself. Sometimes things felt off, like the layout changed when I wasn't looking, or a path I'd taken yesterday wasn't there the next morning. A few weeks later, I found something. A giant hole, right in the middle of the junkyard. The hole showed up sometime in late April. I didn't notice it right away. To be fair, the middle of the yard's always cluttered. It's where we keep the unsorted stuff. Bigger piles of scrap metal, busted washing machines, lawn mowers, furniture without legs, you know? If you're not careful, you can lose track of what's solid ground and what's just a hollow gap between broken things. But this was different. It was a perfect circle, about 6 feet across. No marks around the edge. No signs that something had fallen in. Just a clean, dark hole in the dirt, right where the sun hits around noon. I only spotted it because a wheelbarrow tipped over near it while I was hauling a broken car door. Figured I'd push a few things aside to flatten the ground, and that's when I saw it. "Hey, Baker, you know about this?" I called, standing a few feet back. He walked over slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. He didn't look surprised, just annoyed, like someone seeing the same leak in a roof again. "Yeah, that one's new," he said. "New? You mean there's others?" He nodded. "Yeah, every few years one opens up, never in the same spot." I crouched down and tossed a small washer in. I never heard it hit bottom. "How deep is it?" I asked. "Oh, too deep. Don't throw stuff in. That just brings 'em faster." I stood back up. "Them?" I asked. He didn't answer at first. He just looked at the hole like it personally offended him. Then he said, "We call them parasites." I thought he was joking. "Parasites? That sounds like something from a bad movie," I said. He gave me a look. "They come out at night. Not every night. Just when it's warm and something in the pile starts to rot. You'll smell it. When you do, you sit up in the tower with the floodlight and the rifle. You shoot on sight." That made me blink. Hold on. There's a tower, a rifle? He pointed toward a wooden watchtower I'd never noticed before, hidden behind the stacked fridges. It had a spotlight rigged on top and a tarp nailed over the side to block wind. "Yeah, I'll show you the setup tonight. You're on rotation now." "Rotation for what?" I asked. "Guard duty," he replied. Didn't make much sense at the time, but I didn't argue. Later that evening, just after dinner, Baker handed me a hunting rifle and a little box of holy water vials. "All right, well, bullets slow 'em down. Holy water keeps 'em dead," he said. We climbed the watchtower as the sun went down. From on top, I could see the whole yard. Twisted piles of junk stretching out in all directions. And in the center, the perfect black hole. "Don't shine the light on it unless you hear something. They don't like light. But if you keep it on too long, they'll learn to move around it," he explained. We sat in silence for a long time. Crickets made noise in the woods, and the wind knocked something loose near the fence line. Baker just sat on a folding chair and chewed sunflower seeds, spitting them into a cup. I held the rifle, trying not to think too much. Then around midnight, we heard it. Not loud, just a scratching sound, like something with too many limbs trying to climb out of something narrow. Baker didn't move. He just nudged the spotlight. "Wait," he said. The sound stopped. And then came the smell, like meat left in a sealed cooler during the summer. "Now," he said. I turned on the spotlight. The thing crawling out of the hole didn't look real. It was pale, with skin like boiled leather. It had no eyes that I could see, just a wide, splitting jaw that opened at the sides, revealing rows of teeth like a leech. It made no noise. It just stood there, smelling the air. I fired once. The bullet knocked it sideways, but it didn't fall. It staggered, then turned toward the light. Baker tossed me a vial and told me to throw it. I pulled the cap and flung it, and the water hit the thing in the side. That's when it screamed. The sound made my teeth hurt. The creature flailed, then collapsed into itself, folding like it was being crushed from the inside. After a few seconds, it stopped moving completely. Baker stood up, brushing off his hands. "All right, that's one. Might be another tonight. They travel in pairs sometimes." I stared at him. "How long has this been going on?" He shrugged. "Oh, long as I've been alive. Longer, probably. My dad used to handle it before me. His dad before him. Every town has something like this, if you know where to look. Most just don't talk about it." "And junkyards are where these holes show up?" I asked. "Oh, mostly. They show up in places that hold things. Places where objects sit and soak up human energy. Pain, anger, grief. Junkyards, storage units, antique shops. Graveyards sometimes. But junkyards are best. They're already fenced in, already watched, and no one asks questions." I looked at the rifle in my lap. "So this is a security job?" I asked. He laughed once. "More or less." It feels like something the military should be handling," I said. He leaned on the railing. "Oh, maybe in bigger cities. Round here, the townsfolk you grow up with, they're all you've got. Nobody's coming to save us. So we do it ourselves." He said it like it was just part of life, like mowing grass or taking out the trash. I looked back down at the yard. The hole was quiet again. Nothing moved. I thought about the monkey, about the way that thing had gripped my hand like it hated me personally. And now these things, these parasites. "Do they ever get out?" I asked. "Oh, sometimes. Not often. That's why we stay on it," he replied. He slapped me on the shoulder. "Welcome to the real job, Rory." After the thing that came out of the hole, I thought I'd seen the weirdest the junkyard had to offer. I was wrong. The next strange thing I saw came on a quiet morning. It rained the night before, so the ground was soft and slick. I was dragging out some metal siding that'd gotten buried under a half-collapsed piano, trying not to lose my boots in the mud. The yard was quiet, except for the distant sounds of birds and a busted wind chime hanging off a bent pole. And that's when I started noticing the cats. They weren't stray cats exactly. They didn't look sick or skinny like regular strays. These were clean, quiet, and fast. First I thought maybe they were feral, but they weren't scared of people. They'd show up in the junkyard without warning, walk across the piles like they knew exactly where they were going, and disappear again like nothing had happened. Baker didn't say anything about him at first, so I didn't either. But then one afternoon, I saw something I couldn't explain. It was just after lunch. I was organizing old chairs near the back fence, close to where we keep the broken garden statues and lawn gnomes. There was this rocking chair I'd been trying to fix up. Something about it looked like it might sell if cleaned up. The paint was chipped, but the wood was good underneath. Anyway, I turned around to grab a hammer, and when I looked up, there was an orange tabby cat sitting right on top of the chair. I hadn't heard it approach. It didn't meow or move. It just sat there, looking at something I couldn't see. And that's when I noticed the backpack. It was red, bright red. Didn't look like it was strapped on with anything. It just sat snugly across the cat's shoulders like it belonged there, It had a flap, and I swear, I saw it moving just a little, like something inside was shifting around. Then the air around the chair got cold. Not the wind, just the space around the chair itself. It was like a chill settled right over it, and the cat's tail started to twitch. And then I saw it. It wasn't a person exactly, more like a shimmer in the shape of one. A woman. She looked old. Her dress looked like something from the 50s. Her hands reached out slowly, like she didn't know where she was. The closer she got to the chair, the more her shape came together. She sat down, right into the chair. The cat didn't move. It just waited, tail flicking. Then the red flap on the backpack popped open. I didn't see exactly what came out. It was more like a light, a soft one, the kind you see when you close your eyes and face the sun. It came from the flap, and it wrapped around the woman like a net made of light. She didn't struggle. She looked up at the cat, smiled, and then vanished. Just like that. Gone? The light pulled itself back into the backpack, and the flap closed on its own. The cat gave a single loud purr, a real one this time, then hopped down from the chair, landed like it weighed nothing, and trotted off into the junkyard like it had someplace to be. I didn't move. I just stood there with the hammer in my hand, trying to figure out what I'd just seen. Eventually, I walked back to the trailer. Baker was on the porch drinking iced tea out of a big red plastic cup. I sat down on the steps and said, "Hey, so why do the cats wear red backpacks?" He didn't even blink. "Oh, you saw one do a pickup." "A what?" "A collection. They come for spirits that follow sentimental junk. Happens sometimes. A widow drops off her husband's chair. Some kid dumps a box of toys from his dead brother. People think they're throwing away objects, but they're not. Sometimes the spirits get stuck. Sentimentality and nostalgia are powerful emotions, you know," he said, taking a sip. "And the cats?" I asked. "Work for the Grim Reaper," he began. "Yep, that guy. Don't ask me how it works. I just know what I've seen." He pointed at my hammer. "Yeah, some spirits go easy, some don't. That's why they send cats." I blinked. "Cats fight ghosts?" "Oh, they don't fight. They collect. Each cat has a job. Some chase down runaways, some sneak into attics and pull out the confused ones. Some, like the one you saw, come to peaceful spots where the spirit is already halfway gone. All kinds of cats, tabbies, Siameses. Even saw a bobcat once, dragging a Civil War guy out of a wagon wheel." I couldn't help but ask, "Why the red backpacks? Did they all wear red backpacks?" He nodded. "Yeah, that's how you know they're official. Red backpack. Never says a word, just does the job and moves on." I sat there for a while, thinking about that light. It was hard to imagine death hiring feline assistants to help with the afterlife logistics. "Okay, so the cats aren't the weirdest part of this place," I said. Baker laughed. "Not even close." He tossed me a bottle of cold water from the cooler. You get used to the weird stuff. You see enough of it, just becomes background noise. Ohio's full of strange places. Most folks just keep their heads down and pretend not to notice. But we notice. And we make sure the right things go where they're supposed to. I watched the edge of the yard for a while. I thought I saw the orange tabby again, just for a second, before it disappeared into a pile of refrigerators. Baker leaned back in his chair and said, "You'll probably see more of them now that they know you're aware. They like people who pay attention." I didn't know if that was a good or a bad thing. I just nodded. And from then on, I started keeping an eye out. I'd see a set of ears sticking up behind a broken microwave, or a red strap slipping through a stack of tires. Sometimes I'd find paw prints where no cat should have been able to climb. And every now and then, a chair would rock by itself. A record would spin once before stopping. A toy would light up for just a second. Then a cat would show up. And the rest would go quiet. After I saw enough of those cats, I stopped trying to make sense of what counted as normal around here. Nothing really followed rules. If ghosts could hitch a ride on stuffed animals, and a tabby could carry souls in a backpack, then what else was I supposed to expect? Baker didn't act surprised about any of it. So eventually I didn't either. The junkyard had its own logic, and if I wanted to keep my job and stay alive, I had to learn it fast. And that's when I found out about the corpse flowers. Not flowers in the usual sense. These were taller than a man, with a smell that could knock you flat, and petals big enough to close around a truck tire. They weren't here for decoration. They were planted with purpose. And it became my job to feed them, which, as it turns out, is even more dangerous than it sounded. I didn't know anything about corpse flowers until Baker handed me a bucket full of meat. The meat was old. Some of it came from the town butcher, scraps that weren't good enough to sell. Some of it came from dead parasites, their limbs chopped into pieces and left to rot for a few days until they smelled just right. I didn't ask questions about where the rest came from. I just took the bucket, held it at arm's length, and followed Baker across the yard. The corpse flowers were planted in a wide ring around the center piles near the hole. They didn't look like regular plants. Each one had a thick stalk like a tree trunk and petals as long as my arm. The petals were purple and green, with black edges that looked burnt. When the flowers were fully open, they stood taller than me. Some were nearly 6 feet high. And the first thing I noticed was the smell. Wasn't like anything I'd ever smelled before. It was sharp, sweet, rotting. Not just gross, it was confusing. Made my head feel light, like I'd skipped a meal and spun around in circles. I had to steady myself on a busted lawnmower just to keep from falling over. Baker had warned me ahead of time. He said the flowers give off a smell when they're hungry. It's how they lure things in. The scent affects people and parasites the same way. If you get too close when they haven't eaten, you might pass out. And if you pass out, you might not wake up. I stayed back. Baker showed me how to toss the meat without stepping too close. You aim for the base of the flower, right where the petals curl open. When the meat hits the center, the flower reacts almost immediately. The petals twitch, then fold inward like a slow trap, pulling the food inside. He said not to worry if I hear chewing sounds, that's normal. He also said if the flower makes a sound like a burp, that means it's satisfied. I thought he was joking. But then I heard it myself. A short, wet belch after the third flower got its share. That was the beginning of my new chore. Every other day, I go around the yard with 2 buckets and feed the flowers. They're not everywhere, just in certain places where the parasites tend to crawl. The flowers act as a second line of defense. If I miss something, or the tower light's too slow, the flowers are there to catch what I can't. I've seen it happen once. One night, I was on watch again. The smell came first, then the movement. A parasite climbed halfway out of the hole before I could get the spotlight on it. I reached for the rifle, but then something else moved faster. One of the corpse flowers near the edge of the pit leaned in. I didn't know they could move like that. It stretched forward on its thick stalk, petals wide open. The parasite didn't even look up in time. The flower snapped shut like a bear trap. There was no sound at first, just a hard slap as the petals closed. Then came the squelch. It was loud. I don't need to describe it. I think you can guess. It was disgusting, but also kind of amazing. The next morning, all that was left was a thin line of slime on the ground and a round seed lying nearby. The seeds are almost the size of a peach, shaped like tiny skulls. They're heavy and hard, like someone carved them from bone. I collect them in a separate bin in the shed. Baker says they don't sprout unless planted on top of monster remains. That's why the flowers only grow near the hole or the burn pit. They need the right kind of meat to grow. Once a flower is planted, it grows fast. Within a few weeks, the stalks shoot up and start to bloom. At full size, they stay active for about a year before collapsing in on themselves and rotting away. When that happens, we burn the remains and plant a new one using one of the seeds. It's a cycle. Ugly, but useful. I've learned to respect them. The flowers don't like being touched. I found that out the hard way when I tripped and my hand brushed one of the petals. It wasn't feeding time, but the smell was still strong. My vision went blurry, and I had to crawl back to the trailer to clear my head. I spent the rest of the day with my head in a bucket. And since then, I stay a safe distance. I use a long-handled scoop to toss the meat. I wear gloves and keep a cloth around my nose. If the flowers start smelling worse than usual, I know I'm behind schedule. They don't speak or move much, but they're smart in their own way. They remember patterns. If you feed them regularly, they stay calm. If you skip a day, they notice. They're not pets. Well, they're not plants either, exactly. They're more like tools. Dangerous, living tools that protect the yard when bullets and holy water aren't enough. Sometimes I wonder where they came from. Who figured out they could eat monsters, you know? Did someone try planting one in a city once? What happened to that city? But those are questions that don't get answered out here. You just learn to do the work. Now, feeding the corpse flowers is just part of my routine, same as checking the fence line or sharpening the blades. The flowers have their place. They do their job. And as long as I do mine, we don't have a problem. You know, I still can't believe what I'm saying most days. But that's the thing about this place. You don't have to believe it for it to be real. And yeah, that's all the stories I got for now. Didn't mean to stay here this long. When I first showed up, I thought it'd be like every other job I've had, few weeks of hauling junk, maybe a weird story or two. Then I'd be back on the road, bag packed, no goodbyes. But this place gets under your skin in a strange way. Maybe it's the things I've seen. Parasites crawling out of holes like they're late for something. Corpse flowers saving my life like it's just part of their job. And cats working part-time for the Grim Reaper. I still don't understand any of it. Not really. I just know it all fits together somehow. Maybe that's what keeps me here. There's mystery in the junk. Wonder, too. You start realizing that not everything forgotten is worthless. Some things are just waiting to be seen again. Some things come back with teeth, sure, but others come back with stories. And then there's Baker, this weird little job, and the town that leaves us alone, but still shows up when it matters. I didn't come here looking for a place to belong, but maybe I found one anyway. This job's not on any map. There's no website, no office, no paperwork, but it's real. And I'm part of it now. A junkyard full of monsters, cursed antiques, and too many secrets to count. And somehow I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. So yeah, I think I'll be staying. Hey, huge thank you to all my patrons. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, there's a link in the description. I hope you enjoyed the story, and have a good night.